Hello and welcome to Better Commander. Is it equipment? I don't know. Is it? Recently had a little time on my hands, things being what they are, and I decided to challenge myself to build a deck with a commander that's been sitting on the shelf in my mind, waiting to be explored. The only lore we have on this guy is that he had some kind of fight with a kraken, and then he lives inside its corpse like a mermaid Willy Wonka in there, creating all kinds of cool inventions. That's Dalakos. Look, I think he's pretty awesome looking. He's in there building Icarus wings and chilling in a dead kraken. I mean, what's not to love about this guy? So I decided to build him. A couple of Scryfall searches later, I've got a decent framework for a red-blue equipment deck helmed by the Leonardo da Vinci of Theros. Dalakos, Crafter of Wonders, is a legendary Merfolk artificer for 1 blue and a red. You can tap him to add 2 colorless mana. Spend this mana only to cast artifact spells or activate the ability of artifacts. Dalakos has 2 power and 4 toughness. So let's just dissect this for a moment. We have a ramp in the command zone, but only for artifacts. Dalakos is a merfolk, a merman, mermaid, I don't know, which could be relevant. He also wants equipped creatures and makes them evasive and hard to anticipate. So how do we build this guy? There's a few strategies or card archetypes that we want as our building blocks. We want small creatures that fuel our strategy by providing card advantage. You can often end up with 9 usable mana on turn 5, so we sometimes see our hand depleted after playing 4 or 5 cheap spells. We want artifact and artifact synergies that further our game plan. We want to be drawing off of artifacts to keep our hand stocked. We also want cheap equipment that provides card advantage or some other advantage. If you want to get silly, you can include a Merfolk sub-theme, as there are quite a few that fit the picture of small evasive creatures. Then finally, we want big creatures, big beaters that can win the game. Late game, we want big, evasive, damaging creatures that can put the nail in the coffin for our opponents. I built 2 versions of this deck, budget version, more expensive version. As always, you can go through and find cards that are cheaper to really push the budget much lower, but you sacrifice some power the cheaper you go. So for cheap creatures that generate us card advantage, I use some old favorites and some that wouldn't make the cut in some other decks. The goal is to equip these creatures so they end up with haste and flying with Dalakos on the field. Fervent Champion is an all-star in equipment decks. A few of our equipment has an equip cost greater than 3. Ghostly Pilferer generates a lot of card advantage. He's 1 in a blue for a creature. Spirit Rogue, he's a 2/1. Whenever Ghostly Pilferer becomes untapped, you may pay 2 if you do draw a card. This is actually relevant a lot of the time. Whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card. So this includes all commanders from the command zone. This also includes cards like Jeska's Will, where cards are cast from exile. Also, you can discard a card. Ghostly Pilferer can't be blocked this turn, which is pretty awesome when you suit him up with all of your equipment. If you play this early, you'll be drawing 1 or 2 cards from it definitely. Grenzo Havoc Raiser. This card is currently $30. If you don't have one, I wouldn't say to necessarily pick it up for this deck, but I do have one, so I'm going to include it. So it's a red for a legendary creature, Goblin Rogue. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, which is the point of this deck, choose 1, goad target creature that player controls, or exile the top card of that player's library. Until the end of turn, you may cast that card, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast this spell. We're clearly going to be doing damage to our opponents, and this is pure card advantage. Thieving Skydiver, 1 in a blue. Creature, Merfolk Rogue, 2/1. Kicker X. X can't be 0. You may pay an additional X as you cast this spell. So this thing has flying. When Thieving Skydiver enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, gain control of target artifact with mana value X or less. If that artifact is an equipment, attach it to Thieving Skydiver. Early game, this costs 3 and has the hidden text, gain control of target soul ring. Late game, you can target your own equipment to swing in and cheat the equip cost. This card is highly underrated. This card is bulk price right now. I would definitely pick one up. Armory Automaton, costs 3. Artifact creature, it's a construct, 2/2. Whenever Armory Automaton enters the battlefield or attacks, you may attach any number of target equipment to it. Control of the equipment doesn't change. Okay, Dalakos can help pay for the cost of this beast, then all the equipment you control zings over to him, and he also gets flying and haste. Good card. Emery, Lurker of the Loch, helps us to recur our artifacts, and Jorian, Ruin Diver, helps us to capitalize off casting our cheap creatures and equipment. These 2 feed into our Merfolk sub-theme, so you can pretend to frolic under the sea. Etch Champion will hopefully have Metalcraft and protection from all colors. This makes it a fantastic blocker. We're going to be swinging a lot and tapping our commander to pay equip costs, so having this guy untapped will come in especially handy. I did a couple Scryfall searches for creatures that draw cards when they attack or deal damage and included a few in this deck. In blue, Soul Knife Spy and Library Larcenist, again, another Merfolk. And in red, we have Prophetic Flame Speaker and Stromkirk Occultist. These two allow us impulse draw, so keep that in mind. You might want to wait until second main phase to cast all your spells. They also bring their own keywords to add to whatever our equipment grants. I love both of these cards and haven't really found a deck where they fit better than this one. Theta Adele, Soul Ring Grabber, Acquisitor. Theta Adele, legendary creature, Merfolk Rogue, 2/2, Island Walk. Whenever Theta Adele Acquisitor deals combat damage to a player, search that player's library for an artifact card and exile it. Then that player shuffles. Until the end of turn, you may play that card. This thing has gotten me Soul Ring, it's got me Skull Clamp, it's got me Staff of Domination, you name it. And to top off our Merfolk theme, we have Sviloon of Sea and Sky, 1 a blue and a blue. Legendary creature, Merfolk God, 3/4. Sviloon of Sea and Sky has indestructible as long as you control at least 2 other Merfolk. Whenever she attacks, draw a card. Other Merfolk you control have Ward 1. So we have some protection for our commander and possible indestructible. The real reason to run this, though, is that it's stat line for cost. 3/4 is as good as it gets for a card that draws on attack. I love this card as well. Joyra, Weatherlight Captain, and Vidalcan Archmage help keep our hands full off casting our artifacts. Joyra is head and shoulders above Vidalcan Archmage, but we run the inferior version for redundancy. There are a million cheap equipment we can select from, and honestly, you can pick and choose based on budget. For ramp, we have Goldvein Pick, which is very cheap for what it offers. 2 colorless for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token, and the equip cost is only 1. Dowsing Dagger is so good. It flips into Lost Veil, a land that taps for 3 mana. It has a minor drawback, but a Lotus Veil that early in the game is incredible ramp. If you want to get a little more pricey, Sword of Hearth and Home and Sword of the Animus are great includes in this deck. These are both $8 to $10 right now, and I'd say they are both very worth the price. We also want to include equipment that draws us cards, so we have Mask of Memory and Rogue's Gloves. These are both pretty cheap money-wise and mana-wise, and provide a refuel with every attack. Nurok's Stealth Suit can protect our biggest threats from targeted removal and can be moved around at instant speed. If someone targets your commander or another key creature, we can pay 2 blue to zip up our Stealth Suit and hide in the bushes. Keep in mind that this suit has a drawback. Equip effects are targeted, so you need to move Nurok's Stealth Suit off if you want to equip another artifact. And if you don't have another creature to move it onto, you are out of luck. For just 35 cents, you can have someone's life total with Scytheclaw. This creates its own germ, so with Dalakos on the field, the germ has haste and flying. Note the following ruling. Scytheclaw's triggered ability triggers and resolves after combat damage is dealt. For example, if the germ token deals 1 combat damage to a player with 10 life, combat damage will reduce that player's life total to 9. Then Scytheclaw's ability will trigger and will cause the player to lose 5 life, leaving the player at 4. This brings up the subject of a living weapon. There are a few equipment that come with their own creature. Most are questionable, to say the least. Bonehorde, Flayer Husk, Batterskull, Batterbone are pretty decent. Modern Horizons 2 brought us Nettlecyst and Cauldra Complete. Nettlecyst is about $2 and is a great card to think about in treasure decks, clue decks, blood token decks, and decks like this. And Cauldra Complete is just its own total package that'll hang around and give indestructible to whatever it equips. In total, you probably want about 20 equipment, possibly more. When you're building a deck like this, be sure to goldfish it a bunch so you can get a sense of what the right ratio of creatures to artifacts is. You can also include tutors like Treasure Mage or Deadeye Quartermaster. If you're building on a budget especially, cards like this can add some consistency. You won't have all the best equipment that exists in Magic the Gathering, but you can have consistent access to the best card in your deck. While goldfishing this deck, I found myself with a big board presence, but not too much in hand. I added a few wheels to help keep our hands full. You can pick whatever you want here, but I used Wheel of Misfortune and Day's Undoing. Day's Undoing ends the turn, but I found I can empty my hand and cast it with my last 3 mana. Something to keep in mind, but I found the drawback negligible. Reverse Engineer and Saheeli's Directive have Improvise, which can tap our equipment to help pay the mana cost. The equipment never taps anyway. Saheeli's Directive is great in artifact decks, and I'm no math wizard, but we have 32 artifacts in our deck, so it should work out in our favor. Toralf, God of Fury. This is going to be one of our big beaters that we need to close out the game. So Toralf also doubles as an equipment in a pinch. He has an impressive stat line, and that's strange static ability and trample. Whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage, Toralf deals damage equal to the excess to any target other than that permanent. This can be incredibly useful during combat or after a blasphemous act. Etali, Primal Storm, and Steel Hellkite are commander staples for a reason and are very difficult for our opponents to deal with when they have haste and flying. With the prevalence of treasure tokens, we can pay 0 and mess up their day with Steel Hellkite, or we can steal stuff off the top of their library with Etali. These are both great value cards and awesome big beaters in this deck. And the best card in this whole big pile of cards, Shimmer Dragon. 4 blue, creature, dragon, 5/6, flying. As long as you control 4 or more artifacts, Shimmer Dragon has hexproof. Tap 2 untapped artifacts you control, draw a card. And this guy says, the Indigo Dragon gladly traded a bit of its hoard for everlasting moonlight. The heck's that supposed to mean? This guy will probably have hexproof most of the time, and we can tap our equipment to draw cards. In games where I've gotten this out, there is tremendous card advantage to be had. I probably drew about 7 cards off this beast in the course of 3 turns. Once it's on the field, it's also very hard for our opponents to remove. So that's it. This has been one of my quarantine passion projects. This deck plays fast and speaks to the Timmy in me. It can be built on a budget. I think I'd have to do a lot of legwork to get it below $100, but I think it can be done. If you use a lot of fast, low converted mana cost creatures that draw cards on attack or on combat damage to a player, and you use a lot of very cheap equipment, I think this thing can be built for about $100, and you can have a nice fun deck that you can throw out at game night or whatever. Anyways, thanks for watching. This has been Nicky G from Better Commander. Leave a comment, like, and subscribe for more Commander deep dives, and have a good one.